Hey there, welcome to this presentation of the Paper Street Podcast. You are late to the party, a program on the Paper Street Pictures Podcast Network, and your hosts for the following are yours truly. My name is Shawn Talley, and joining me to talk, or maybe dance, he's a fellow member of the Paper Street Pictures production team. He is Mr. Cameron Burns. How goes it, Cameron?
It is going well. Probably there will be no dancing from me on this episode. We'll see about our esteemed guest when we get there, but I will be doing no dancing. But I am good. I am north of the border in Canada, getting ready to start a new show and TV show, like not a new podcast. Not like I was cheating on you. That's not the case.
Right.
But things are hectic, but things are good. And we found time to record, which I'm excited about.
Yes, despite you being the Lithgow and anti-dance.
Oh, John Lithgow. I love him. We will get into that later. So for anybody who's kind of first time on the program here, what we do is we reach out to a potential guest and we say, hey, man, what is your biggest blind spot movie? What is that big zeitgeist popular movie that for whatever reason you've never seen? Because, everyone has that movie. So we chat with them a little bit before they watch it. Just, what do you know about the movie? What do you think? Why didn't you watch it before now? And then we send them off to do a little homework and watch the movie. And then we reconvene afterwards and have a big old discussion about the movie, whether they liked it, kind of what they thought they would be, and just kind of go from there. So if you're new to the program, that's kind of how the premise breaks down.
Indeed. And a friend of Paper Street and filmmaker in his own right, Mr. Phillip Guzman, is our guest this week. And he pinned down that after seeing Flashdance for the first time recently, he also realized he didn't see a good partner movie of that. And that is 1984's very much in the culture, very popular movie, Footloose. So yeah, it's a fun one that still gets referenced to this day, including in like Guardians of the Galaxy movies. It's still out there. It's had a remake. We'll touch on if you saw that too. Paper Street favorite film Hot Rod does full on homage to it. So without further ado, let's ask Phillip why. All right, joining us for this episode is the director, producer, and writer whose directorial features include House of Glass, Dead Awake, and Sleep No More. Coming to us from Austin, Texas, he is Mr. Phillip Guzman. Phillip, thank you so much for joining us here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And one more thing about Mr. Phillip here. He has never seen the 1984 film Footloose.
So first question, why?
Man, it's I think it's the premise, which is also why I don't like cult horror or folk horror either, where it's like an entire town believes you can't do one thing. Has never been something that has spoken to me. Like I hear a whole town that won't let you dance, and I just I don't know, just the premise alone, I just leave the town, if I have to dance. So just the premise alone has never intrigued me. Just like folk horror, I'm like, cool, everyone don't freak out when this one bad thing happens. Just quietly pack your shit and leave. So I guess it's a ongoing thing with me.
So anything involving like sundown towns and that kind of thing, or Village of the Damned?
Yeah, I'm out, but I'm out like coolly. I'm like, smoking a cigarette, acting, nonchalant, but I'm out,
But a movie like Hot Fuzz will fly though, because it's a take on that very thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah, Hot Fuzz works because it's making fun of that trope and they're fighting back against it, and it's comical. Like I definitely like Hot Fuzz. That was fun.
I just love the idea that you would immediately leave any town you're not allowed to dance in. Like you're such a dance enthusiast that you're just like, you know what? I'm out.
If that was my passion, dancing, and someone's like, hey, you can't dance in this town. I mean, I'm just going to, tap dance out of the town. Like, why would I stay there? Like, I don't know. But I guess he's like a kid in high school, Kevin Bacon, right? And he's got to move the feet to bring the community back up.
Yeah, you can only do so much when you're 16. There's only so much moving out of the town you can get away with when you're 16. So this you kind of seamlessly transitioned into what I was going to ask next, which is like, what do you, and it sounds like you have some sort of a grasp on it, but what do you think this movie is? Like, what is your I've never seen it, here's how I would explain it kind of breakdown?
Man, I think it's, like a town where dancing's a gateway drug to happiness and other things. So they try to nip it in the bud and stop you from dancing or gathering or having fun. And feels very, I don't know, fascist or something.
Oh, you're in for a treat. You're in for a treat. That's all I can say.
It's not that this movie's not very much in the culture as far as the MCU has referenced it multiple times. Hot Rod does a full homage to it. But how did you land on this specific movie? Because I don't know, did you run through a list with Cameron when he was asking what you haven't seen? Because this is such a very specific one to land on.
we actually were talking for quite a while, and he was, what haven't you seen? I'm like, man, I'm not a big fan of like English biopic, dramas. And he was like, yeah, let's find something else you're not a fan of. So that way we're not talking about like the King's Speech or something. And then we just kept talking. And I was like, man, you know what I just saw recently the other day was, it was a few months back. It was Flashdance. It was on some channel and I watched. I was like, this is actually surprisingly fun. And why did teenage Phillip ignore this movie for 20 something years until I'm in my 40s now? Because I would have probably really enjoyed it as a kid. And so we were talking about that. And I was like, well, shit, I've never seen Footloose either. And that's how we've arrived here.
That kind of makes sense. They're sort of comp movies to each other in that they had huge soundtracks and have interpretive dance numbers and sexy dance time.
Yeah. Yeah, just I guess teenage Phillip was, or not even, it was probably like, when this came out, 1984?
Correct.
Yeah, so I was 4, and yeah, I never watched it ever. So,
but to be fair, because you're roughly the same age I am, this movie, you had to try to miss it. It was like a TBS favorite. It was an HBO favorite for a while. Like this one was out there. Like before I finally watched it for the first time, I think I had seen bits and pieces of like half the movie, which you may end up in the same boat. Where you're like, oh, I know this scene.
I mean, I've seen like the reference, like they're like in a barn or something, and he says something, everyone cheers. I've seen that like on, like promo videos for like HBO or something, right? Like some huge like trailer to showcase all the films they have going on. But that's all I've ever seen of it. And Kenny Loggins does the song, right? Footloose. And that's it, man. Right. All I know.
Yeah. Yeah, you might chuckle just at a few of the needle drops because they've been played in so many other films. You're like, oh, this is the original time. I won't spoil any others if you don't know them, but yeah, beyond Footloose, the soundtrack will be very familiar to a 1980s kid.
As will the cast. You'll be like, I know this person. It's a lot of people's like early big movie that they kind of blew up from. So that'll be fun watch. Yeah, I think you're in for a treat. This is kind of, male Flashdance. So if you're into Flashdance, if you're now a dance movie enthusiast, I feel like this is gonna finish. This is gonna bring you fully in.
Well, I'm excited. So it's gonna be like The Outsiders, but with dancing.
That's almost exactly right, actually. So you've seen the movie in your head already without having seen the movie.
Awesome. Well, yeah. I mean, hopefully it's got the Matt Dillons and all that stuff in there.
There are some greasers.
Yeah.
There are some brothers of better acting, more famous people. So yeah, you're on the right track.
All right. Well, I'm excited.
How dare you soil the good name of Matt Dillon?
I love Matt Dillon.
Yeah, it's great.
Especially back in the days, man. He was really, which is kind of interesting how he's kind of dropped off a little bit because, man, his trajectory in the 80s was supposed to be Tom Cruise pretty much.
Yeah, and then he got that big pop in There's Something About Mary where he kind of popped back up, and then he was in everything like right after that. And yeah, now he's kind of
and then he did Wild Things, and then he dropped back down.
Yeah, he's still in Hollywood purgatory for Wild Things, but
well, again, his appreciation of Flashdance has me have a little hope that he might dig this one because while there is no scene where Kevin Bacon sneakily takes his bra off under his sweatsuit, it is still got some sexy stuff in it. So,
you've never seen the director's cut, Shawn?
Apparently not. Apparently, I'm missing that.
Oh, you're missing the best 15 minutes of the movie,
right?
That's awesome.
All right. Without further ado, then let's let Phillip go. Watch Footloose. Come back and tell us everything he thought about it and more.
All right.
Stay tuned.
Hey there. Welcome back. What was mere seconds for you, the listener, was a bit longer for us. How long, we'll never tell. But it is now time to dance. Yes, we will be leaping and dancing before the Lord, to quote Ren McCormick, quoting the Book of Samuel. When we last left off, our guest, Phillip Guzman, hadn't seen Footloose. He was late to the party, but at least he got here. And we welcome him back, a more cultured individual, a more learned 1980s dance movie film viewer, a man who's now seen the 1984 film Footloose. Phillip, how do you feel about any or all of those things?
Yeah, it was fun. It's funny because like deep down inside, I'm like, have I seen it? And I definitely had not seen it. And so, sometimes your mind, you can forget little things here and there. But no, I had never seen that movie. So, yeah, confirmed. And it was fun.
Was it what you expected? Was it different than you expected? Like, how did it land?
It was what I expected, but I felt like the story kind of jumped around. Like, you know how you have that saying, like, cut to the scene as late as possible? A lot of Footloose, they really took that to heart and cut really late into a scene where he's like, I got to go talk to the preacher and get things right. And then cuts to the end of his conversation, just like letting a photo down and like going, I hope you make the right choice, and walks out, which I found that to be kind of funny. A lot of their scenes are, very late cuts to get into it, but I enjoyed it.
It felt like someone came in and was like, too long between dancing, cut all this story stuff.
That's what it felt like. For sure. For sure.
Well, you're fresh off of Flashdance, as we discussed before. This was just right on the heels of it, I believe, the year after, 83 and 84. I personally, I blurt laugh the very second the movie fades in, because it is immediately just on a pair of feet dancing, followed by a montage of various shoed, booted, jazzercise-legged feet dancing. And we talk about this sometimes, how like the last few years of a new decade are still kind of stuck in the previous decade, especially with style. But this being 1984, we were like officially in the 1980s when this movie fades in. And all that footwear and the montage kind of shows it.
I'm not going to lie. I love the intro. At first I laughed, and then I was like, oh shit, those Nike Converse shoes are badass. And I ordered a pair after watching it. And then the second thought was, I bet Tarantino loves this fucking intro. That was the second thought. So
yeah, we don't get them like that anymore. You don't get those like, just, we're going to pause the movie for 5 minutes to show you the name of the crew. We don't get those anymore, but I love those like 80s and 90s long ass intros. Those are the best. And this one is, just nothing but feet.
Oh, man. Oh, crazy true story, which you guys probably don't know. My middle name is Ren. And when I was a kid, I loved my middle name and I wanted to go by my middle name. But then Ren and Stimpy came out. And then everyone was like, oh, Ren, oh, you idiots. And so I was like, fuck, I don't want to go by Ren. Had I seen this movie when I was a kid, I might be Ren, not Phillip. So
you might be a dancer instead of a filmmaker.
There you go. I could be a dancer.
Yeah, this definitely makes the name Ren cool. Can we talk for a second, just in general, about how great this freaking cast is? Like, just character for character, it is so good.
Dude, John Lithgow plays such a great understated antagonist. Like, he was so great in it, man. And it's really interesting, too, because I remember when I was a kid, I saw Raising Cain. And he always just terrifies me. And then I saw, I think, Dr. Giggles later that summer. And I always thought John Lithgow played both roles because my mind just kind of meshes them together. And then seeing him as a preacher, I was like, oh, okay, John Lithgow. But he was great in it, man. Kevin Bacon, dude, that guy's a better dancer than John Travolta. Hot take.
Oh, that is a hot take. That's a bold take. You're not wrong.
He was smooth.
He was smooth. His character is so good in this because it embodies that out of towner fish out of water trope from every 80s movie like this, but he manages to do it in a way where until the very end when the fight happens, where he's like not the guy who's the badass tough guy, like he's just the sensitive guy with the tie.
he drop kicks the guy. Like a fly kick.
He did flying drop kick him.
You could argue he used some dance moves to finally get the best of him, though, because he got beat up a few times, I think, throughout the movie. But yeah, at the end, it's a leaping kick, using his feet a little bit. So you could say the dance came in handy.
I mean, Willard gave it to those guys. He took out like 4 of them on his own. And you got to probably my favorite part of the whole movie is when Willard and Ren first meet. And Willard's just like bullying him. And Ren just says, oh, what a great hat. Do they make that for men? And then Willard was like, you know what? You're all right, kid. And then throughout the whole movie, they're best friends.
Disarming, with the classic 80s way. Make a gay joke.
Day one, best friends.
Oh, for sure. Also, not to jump around, but as we've discussed off air, this is one of my all-time favorite movies. And so I have a lot of thoughts. I love that, they go out to the bar that first time where we find out Willard can't dance. And Kevin Bacon was like, oh, yeah, tough shit. Go away. I'm going to go dance. Like, worst wingman ever. He was just like, oh, sorry to hear that. Here's $1. Go buy a beer. I'm going to dance with both women. Terrible wingman.
Well, see, I interpreted that as maybe if he gets drunk, he'll dance. It's kind of how I looked at that. But maybe, I don't know.
Well, that is not how it went.
No, that's not how it went. He just kept drinking and was like, hey, man, she came here with me. Chris Penn doing. Actually, Chris Penn did a pretty good Southern accent, I thought.
They're all amazing.
While we're doing hot takes, I would argue that the true love story of this movie might be Chris Penn and Kevin Bacon, because they get the whole end up with the big montage of learning how to dance together and then get to fight together at the end, become pals, and they do the dance at the end. So that might be the real love story arc of this movie.
They definitely spend more screen time on that than the love story arc with him and Laurie Singer, who they spend a lot of time talking about each other but very little time together. It's kind of weird. Chris Penn is the stand-in for Laurie Singer half the time. So it does feel like kind of a weird double romance.
But at the same time, she's as much a main character as Ren is in this, because she has the arc with her dad. But for those who don't know her, Mark Singer, the Beastmaster himself's sister, Laurie, she did not do a ton of work, I think, beyond the 80s. But she comes at this with every bit of small town preacher's kid energy, if you've ever met preacher's kids.
Oh, I had no idea that was Mark Singer's sister. That's pretty cool.
That's the hard-hitting stuff you get here, Philip. I can't do Philip. Sorry, I tried it once. It didn't take. For those of you listeners, I have been calling Phillip Guzman Phil for, 8 years. And I just recently found out today that he does not like to be called Phil. He likes to be called Philip, but I can't do it. So sorry, I did my best. But yeah, she is the preacher's daughter to the extreme. I mean, she basically had a Fast and the Furious moment where she's dangling between two cars. She's not a preacher's daughter she's kissing a bunch of dudes. She had a death wish at the beginning of this movie.
Yeah, well, and it continues on throughout. Actually, funny thing, this movie was rated PG. So I've got an almost 3-year-old at home. I was like, hey, you want to watch this movie with Daddy? Oh, my God, 10 seconds in, it's cigarettes, drinking, and curse words every other word. I was like, oh, PG doesn't mean what it means today in 1984. Yeah. And
84 was the year. Yeah. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and Gremlins, that this was the time. Someone else had a 3-year-old in 1984 and was like, all right, we have to change this, Spielberg.
Yeah.
Every other word was son of a bitch, how dare you, asshole. And it's oh, okay.
It was a different time. You could get away with these things. But yeah, she was, man, she had a death wish in the beginning. If Ren hadn't come around, she would not have lasted the year. She wouldn't
have lasted that train.
No, she almost got hit by a car. She was dangling between two cars. I was afraid for her.
Yeah. And you know what, though, man? The movie, for being 1984, was well shot. A lot of these older movies, you'll see them shooting everything on a wide, stop down, so everything's in focus, they don't miss. Man, they use some long lenses and some beautiful bokeh and really nice soft lighting. It was really well shot for a 1984 movie. I was actually pretty impressed by that. Not to go off on a technical side.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We only talk about fart jokes and funny things that happen.
I was impressed with that, though.
Way to bring some class to the establishment. I respect that. No, it was the talent involved in this movie and before and front and behind the camera is crazy. I mean, with these throwaway characters like Diane Weist's character, who, by the way, is the first actor to now be twice on our first 3 episodes have been Diane Weist movies. Go listen to our Lost Boys episode. And Diane Weist and John Lithgow and Sarah Jessica Parker, they just bring such chops to what otherwise could have been smaller, goofier roles. And it makes the movie feel less 80s when they're doing stuff. You don't feel the timing of it. And then you have Tractor Chicken happens and you're back in the 80s. But yeah, they give it a timeless quality because they're so good.
And I learned that song Hero, or Holding Out for a Hero, was written for this movie. I had no clue about that. Pretty cool.
This is great. Shawn, let's talk about the soundtrack, because this is the greatest soundtrack ever.
That song showed up this year in the second biggest movie of the year, Super Mario Brothers. That's how much that song has been used over and over in montages and such. But for as much as this movie, you could argue, is still relevant, the soundtrack was just omnipresent in the 80s. And I did make a note of that because it had over 9 million units sold, which is an insane feat. But a 9-song soundtrack that produced not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, but 6 Billboard Hot 100 top 40 hits, 3 of which actually hit the top 10, 2 of which reached number 1. Title track Footloose by movie soundtrack Messiah Kenny Loggins. Denise Williams, Let's Hear It for the Boy. You also have Mike Reno of Loverboy doing a duet with Ann Wilson of Heart, Almost Paradise. That's a very popular song.
That is a great song.
Dude, yeah. When that came on, I was like, it's the song from Bachelor in Paradise. I had no clue.
Right?
That is a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, I know. It's a guilty pleasure.
And then, Holding Out for a Hero being the other to Cameron's reference of the Tractor Chicken.
Oh, Tractor Chicken. Let's okay, before we move off music, let's a little love for Dancing in the Streets by Shalimar. I love that song too. And I had forgotten it was in this. So yes, probably look, all respect to The Graduate, which probably we'll do at some point on this show. But this may be the greatest soundtrack of all time. It is crazy.
Yeah. You got Bang Your Head by Quiet Riot, Waiting for a Girl Like You by Foreigner, and John Cougar Mellencamp's Hurt So Good also in the movie. They just didn't make the official soundtrack. So you add that dozen songs up and like you're very familiar with like 9 or 10 of them. It's crazy.
I feel like that and the Above the Rim soundtrack are definitely up there.
Oh, that's a good one too. I love the Above the Rim.
Great one.
All right, but we have to go back. I feel like we've only danced around Tractor Chicken, but we really haven't broken it down. So let's talk about Tractor Chicken. For those who haven't seen it or didn't rewatch it, let me set the tone. There is a scene where Ren basically gets called out 3 o'clock high style that he has to like fight the bad guy after school, or at least that's what you think's going to happen. There's going to be a fight. Then Ren shows up and he has to get a montage where he learns how to drive a tractor because he's going to play a game of chicken on a tractor with Laurie Singer's character, Ariel's quasi boyfriend, who's like the bad kid from the other side of the tracks. And they do this insanely long, drawn out scene. Probably we could have gone back and added so much more story to what Phillip was saying earlier if we had just cut the Tractor Chicken scene down from like 10 minutes to 7, because it took as long as you would expect 2 tractors to get to each other, and they didn't cut it at all. Just back and forth, back and forth. It was like Fast and the Furious in slow motion.
You had to cut it to Bonnie Tyler, though. You had to cut it to the song.
I mean,
it was like an Austin Powers scene where the guy's like, no, and it cuts to the wide shot and
the steamroller.
It's still like a block away.
Oh, yes.
Ooh, you know what I just noticed here? I'm looking at IMDb, and so that guy's name was Chuck Cranston, and the guy who was his boss was named Burlington Cranston. Did they cut out information that it was his dad, or did I miss that?
I don't think so. I know Cranston was the mean guy who was running the board meeting at the end of town.
Never mind. Yeah, that's the guy on the board. So
so that probably is his son, but we never got that. But yeah, Cranston was a real dick in that scene.
That's right. Yeah, Chuck Cranston, that's the boyfriend, and then Burlington Cranston was the guy on the board. So I guess they were father and son probably, and it just didn't make the edit because they cut too deep.
Yeah, they did. Well, they weren't interested in story. They were interested in dancing.
Did you read that trivia thing that it's based on a real town in Oklahoma where they banned dancing in a group of, I didn't realize it was based on like a real event.
Oh yeah.
Well, so this has been done. Dancing's been banned a bunch of places, but yeah, this is based on Elmore City, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Where this really happened. But this has happened a lot of places. Southern Baptists are like notorious for banning dancing and get-togethers like this. It's loosely based.
All the way down to the board decision being a tiebreaker. But there's a town in Oklahoma he mentioned, and then some other town in Washington State also claims that it's based on that. So it's funny. There's enough crazy old squares that there's multiple towns this could be based on. And kind of to that point, and a little bit of a real life bleeding in. I love that they do use scripture against Lithgow and the board to make the case for the dancing. Not that it made a difference, I guess, in the end, but
not that it made a difference, but you don't even hear the outcome. It cuts to him just shoveling grain.
Yeah, again,
no one knows if they even voted yes or no yet. Yeah.
Yeah, it cuts to like a week later, and Ren is like moving chicken feet around, and they're like, "Tough break, man. You really got hosed." It's like, wait, did he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's some questionable editing in this. That's the only thing I didn't dig was like some of the editing. I was like, come on, guys. I get tightening it up, but fuck.
A side tangent before I go back to that bit about the scripture was his boss, Andy, who tells him about doing it outside of town, feels like that man was supposed to be Harry Dean Stanton because his voice and demeanor and everything just felt like a Harry Dean Stanton role. The guy that runs the mill for Andy, but his name was Andy, excuse me. But yeah, to the scripture thing that made it so funny was like, as soon as the board didn't like what they heard, their next step was to jump right to banning books, or in this case, burning. Does that sound familiar, Florida? No, I just thought it was a funny.
Take that, DeSantis.
Yeah. But yeah, I did appreciate, speaking of Lithgow's Reverend Shaw character, as he said earlier, Phillip did, he's not a black hat villain. And I kind of forgot in my brain that he is nuanced and he's never so stodgily like against everything that he is able to be talked into it. And that was a bridge too far for him. As soon as the books get burned, that and his daughter's pleading kind of helped him turn the corner. So I did like that there was some nuance to him and he was not just a straight up black hat villain.
Yeah, like even when she's playing music in that scene outside the drive, the Sonic or wherever that place was, and he just stops the music and just looks at her with like heartbreak and walks away. It's like he was very, very nuanced, and I appreciated that. And even like when he smacks her, that felt like it came out of nowhere. It was like, oh, and then he brings it up later that he's never struck anybody. I was like, yeah, interesting. I mean,
you forget that slap because she's slapped by the bad guy. Really, in a very uncomfortable, another 80s mainstay, unfortunately, is man on woman violence. The boyfriend is a total shit to her in a very uncomfortable scene.
Oh, she had a black eye for like a few like scenes past that. Like, yeah, it sticks with her.
Yeah, that fight, it's crazy too, because like you're watching it and he like hits her once and like you don't expect that. But in movies like that happens a lot. But it becomes like a full blown like knockdown, drag out fight where he like tackles her to the ground. And like that was a tussle.
To your point about her death wish, she fights back.
That was that Roddy Piper They Live moment for a minute.
It's what it felt like. Yeah, it was just like a weirdly uncomfortable moment. It was, they don't make them like that anymore. Thank God. She's like a punching bag in this movie. It's crazy. Like, why is everybody trying to beat up Ariel? She's like just trying to live her life, man. She lost her brother. I also love like, getting back into the craft and why I think this movie is really great is it does a really good job of doling out that information. It would have been so much easier to just learn from the beginning that she had lost her brother and that's why she's the way she is and her father's the way he is. But like the fact that they gave you that closer to the middle, I think, really made it hit harder, and it really allowed Lithgow's character and Ariel to really feel more nuanced.
I thought the exact same thing. I thought if that movie was made today, it would start with a bunch of kids drinking and partying and end with them dying. Like 100% is what.
We'd see that whole tragedy first.
Yeah, we would. That would be the cold open, and we wouldn't get the awesome foot scene where we just see feet for 5 minutes. That's the new world we live in, and I don't want to live in that world. Footloose doesn't live in that world. In fact, in 2011, I believe, they remade Footloose to prove that it doesn't live in our world. And what we got was a relatively forgettable remake that felt more like You Got Served than Footloose.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I will say in watching this, I felt that the dancing wasn't even the main focus of the story. It was about the freedom of oppression, really. And so it wasn't even about the dancing. Where a lot of these dancing movies, it's about the dancing, right? It's about like dance competitions, or they're going to join like a dance troupe or something on. It wasn't even really the dancing was just secondary to like what they were fighting for. That was about it.
There's really only two major dance scenes, which is when he punch dances out his rage in the mill, which everyone in the world has seen and also has been parodied to death and stuff like Hot Rod and many other great movies. And then the end dance scene, which for my money is probably the greatest dance scene in the history of film. There's a hot take for you.
And like, where does the confetti just keep coming from for 10 minutes?
No, that's not for us to figure out. Like, listen, Ren spared no expense. You saw the montage where they were building things and
they were rigging stuff up high.
Yeah, everyone was passing bags one to the left, and like until it got to like, it was a classic cleanup montage, like the likes of which we haven't seen since Revenge of the Nerds. And they cleaned that place up so nice. And then yes, the confetti budget on this movie was probably $20,000.
Oh yeah.
But that scene, that dance like sequence at the end, not only is like the dancing really good, and Willard learned all the lessons because he was throwing down at the end, but like it's super well choreographed and super well shot, that scene at the end.
It might actually be my favorite Chris Penn performance.
Okay, we can go there.
He normally plays like just a tough guy asshole that's got a lot of flaws, and in this one, it was weird to see Chris Penn playing
a tough guy asshole with flaws.
No, but he also was kind of like a lovable loser. It was just interesting seeing him play that. Like we're normally like, I imagine him as like Nice Guy Eddie or something from like Reservoir Dogs, Yeah,
he fell into that like kind of typecast as the heavy. Yeah. This is like the making of he still had nuance in this character. It's a little bit that guy, but it's also a little bit, cool best friend. And yeah.
Does that mean, I'm going to guess that means you've not seen the remake either, Philip, of Footloose, the very forgettable remake?
No.
Okay.
I hadn't watched the original classic.
Well, no, I mean, there's people who saw, a later remake or sequel first, but no, the problem, to Cameron's point, it is forgettable because they kind of like stayed too close to this one. It's still kind of out in the country, same premise. Miles Teller's playing Chris Penn's character like straight up in the remake. And I always said like it kind of missed the mark by maybe not updating it to either hip hop or just something more modern times. But yeah, I think it stays too close to the original. And again, no one talks about it. It's very much the Point Break remake. It's already lost in the ether.
Shit, Miles Teller, that's actually really good casting to play Willard. But yeah, moving on.
Yeah, he's quite good in it. And Dennis Quaid plays the Lithgow role relatively well. I just wish our listeners could have seen the look on your face when Shawn just asked you if you had seen the remake. How dare you ask me such a stupid question? Look on your face. I wish this was a YouTube show all of a sudden.
That same year, I took a friend to see The Thing in 2011. They had not seen 1982's The Thing. So it happens.
You should not be friends. You should not be friends with that.
You know what? Fun fact, we're not really anymore.
That's right.
Yeah, certain movies don't need to be remade. That's one of them. I mean, even the effects hold up in that one still.
Well, that one wasn't even a remake. It was just marketed like one. It turns out it was a prequel, but they still called it The Thing. But yeah.
That's right. Is it Nomi Rapace in that one? I think. I don't know.
I don't remember. I
Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I don't know if you're thinking of Prometheus, possibly.
That's right.
But you might be right.
I have no recollection. I have no recollection of the new Thing movie. I saw it and I remember nothing about it. That should tell you how good it is. I know we're jumping around a little bit, but I'm remiss to not bring up the fact that the Ren's mother, who's very good in the movie, Frances Lee McCain, you may recognize her, but not know what you know her from. She is a mom in Gremlins. She is a mom in Stand By Me. She is a mom in Back to the Future. And she is a mom in Footloose. And she is great in all of those. She's so good here. I love that, like, Ren's crazy uncle is just freaking out all the time. And mom is just like, screw him. You give him hell, son. Like the mom is so much better than like the crazy uncle who's just like, now, to be fair, the crazy uncle's kids did get a brick through their window. So he has a reason to be a little upset. That scene went from 0 to 100 fast.
Yeah, I thought it was like the living room. It's like, oh no, that's where their kids are sleeping. And their bed was right next to the window, a brick and glass. I mean, that could have been real bad.
Yeah. Cam likes to shout out fun line readings in movies like we did for Lost Boys. Nice worms. But one of my favorite line reads is just he goes, it says burn in hell. This says burn in hell.
That guy is chewing scenery. Like he's in a different movie than a lot of our more nuanced actors. That guy is in regular generic 80s movie. Whereas some of these other actors are trying to make a drama. This guy was, he'd have fit right in Lost Boys.
Yeah. Well, dude, like Frances Lee McCain, like growing up in the 80s, it's like what you picture every mom to be. You know, it's I definitely remember her in every movie I loved as a mom character. Diane Wiest as well. I think she was Edward Scissorhands, right?
And also Lost Boys.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Lost Boys. Yeah. So like both of them were like, oh, look, it's mom. Growing
Diane
up
Wiest
VHS tapes.
Yeah, Diane Wiest does amazing work in this movie. She's not on screen very often. She doesn't have very many lines, but she manages to like
her reactions. They're perfect.
Yeah, she manages to kill it and everything. And she just like drops truth bombs everywhere. When she speaks in this movie, people listen. And maybe one of the best moments in this movie is when she tells that lady to sit down in the big meeting at the end.
Yeah.
It's so
good. Rin can talk. Yeah.
Sit down.
Yeah. She's not the stodgy one for a change. A lot of times she does play the stodgy spouse or something. And turns out she's as much like convincing the Reverend to stop being with a stick up his ass too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least he doesn't want to burn books. He hasn't gone to that bridge yet. He was right there. It's never good when you go to burning books. All right, Shawn. I'm not going to ask you because you probably know. Phillip. Yes. In 1984, Footloose was the blank highest grossing film.
In 1984?
Correct.
It was the third highest grossing film.
It was the seventh highest grossing film behind Beverly Hills Cop, Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Gremlins, Karate Kid, and Police Academy. So what a year for film, by the way. Also Romancing the Stone, Splash, a few others.
Yeah, those are all fantastic movies.
Yes, good year for film. So
I'm going to guess Philip's seen all other 9 of those films.
Yes.
That really is what a year of just big movies that are still kind of all in the culture in some way.
Yeah, for sure. If not, we would just bring him back immediately and do the Karate Kid episode or the Gremlins episode or whatever that is. But no, we had too hard a time finding a movie that Philip hadn't seen to immediately have him fall for one of those. Well, he and I texted back and forth for like 3 hours trying to find something.
No, he said when Flashdance came up and he thought of a comp movie that he also hadn't seen. I think it worked out. I'm glad he watched this one. Overall, Philip, positive response. Are you glad you saw it? Are you going to go watch Hot Rod now and laugh at the parody scene?
I mean, I've never seen Hot Rod.
Dear God, Cameron.
Oh my God. Everybody tune in next week for the second episode. We're going to record in about an hour.
I've mentioned that 3 or 4 times, and so have you. And I think in just the assumption that Philip would have seen that movie, especially knowing you and Aaron as well as he does, like, how has that happened? But yeah,
and I love Andy Samberg too. Love him. So I need to watch that one.
Okay, so I want to formally invite you back.
Yeah, you are our first return guest, Philip.
Yes, you are. I want to formally invite you back to talk about Hot Rod once you finally get around to watching it, because if you like Andy Samberg,
love him.
This movie, Hot Rod, will blow your mind. There's no overhyping it.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine, one of my favorite TV shows. And you know what I watched the other day? It was like a sick day with Evie. We were all just hanging out watching, kids TV. And on Disney, they had a new Chip and Dale movie. Have you seen this movie?
It's so good.
Yeah,
dude,
it's so good.
It has no right to be this good, and it's so
it's
good.
The Lonely Island guys. The Lonely Island guys.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's so good. It's like Roger Rabbit, but like with, kind of cartoons that I grew up watching. And just the fact that Dale gets the 3D surgery, I was in tears. It was so good.
Yeah, it came out during COVID and people didn't really like it. It just kind of got brushed under the rug. But yeah, that was on my top 20 movies of the year that year. It's so good, man. Like I love that. I love anything Andy Samberg. But like, yeah, you have to come back and do Hot Rod here in a handful of episodes because I think you will really spark to that one. Like really, really spark to it. I had no idea if you're going to like Footloose, but I know you'll like Hot Rod.
I really enjoyed Footloose. I thought, again, like besides a few editing too deep into a scene and not letting things breathe. But other than that, it was good. I really appreciate the 80s way of doing it. Like, I'm glad they didn't go like the Oppenheimer route where it just starts with him in court and cuts back to different scenes and back to court. Because I was like, that would have been a really funny way to edit that movie too.
Oh, I would love to see like the Oppenheimer version of Footloose. Shawn, we should remake that. Paper Street will produce.
It's already better than the remake.
Philip, you can. I'm really getting the hang of this Philip thing, by the way. It's really starting to fly off the tongue. Yeah. You can direct it. We'll produce it, and we can make like Footlooseheimer, and it'll all be like a courtroom drama. I'm in for that.
Yeah, I think it'd be kind of funny. Just because it definitely was like a big scene. He's got to get ready for the courtroom. And I was like, oh man, I always think like if this was made today, how would they edit it or write it to make it like more edgy or to keep the drama going? And I just thought it was kind of funny.
Yeah, love it. So before we wrap up here, unless Shawn, you have anything to throw in there, do you have anything you want to plug? Anything you want to send the people to?
Was that for Shawn or for me? Sorry.
No one gives a shit what Shawn's plugging. No, that's for you, man. Like,
no, the guest plugs for the guest.
You're the guest. Plug some shit. No one cares what Shawn wants. They have to listen to him every time. Yeah. He's got nothing going on.
I've just been writing a lot lately, just enjoying my time with my new daughter, and got another one on the way in January. I'm plugging that. I got a new daughter on the way in January. So I have two daughters. That'll be fun. And I've just been writing a lot, reading a lot, and, waiting for these strikes to end and, the world to kind of go back to being normal. So I do have a lot of cooking, but nothing official yet.
You heard it here first. Phillip Guzman. He is promoting parenting.
That's right.
Parenting is the promotion. That's the first for the show.
In honor of this first watch and this podcast appearance and his middle name, he will name this new daughter Wren.
That's her middle name, by the way.
Oh,
there you go. See,
her name's going to be Willow Wren.
Is it W-R-E-N named after Wren McCormick, or is it R-E-Y-N named after Phillip Wren Guzman?
It's R-E-Y-N.
Oh, that's a shame.
No W in the.
You still have time to fix that. You still have time to make that change. Well, I look forward to when we bring you back on to talk about Hot Rod. You'll have some new, judging by the way you put out movies, you'll have 3 or 4 new movies to promote because you're the only guy I know that puts them out as fast as we do. So it'll be exciting. But yeah, give Hot Rod a chance.
It's tough to get a blind spot movie from you, but you did mention like you didn't like a lot of British period stuff necessarily. But now that we know Hot Rod is a blind spot, do you have any other glaring ones you can think of as far as major comedies, major action movies, major anything?
Man, I mean, some action movies it takes me a while to get to, but if they're really well made, I'll watch them. I get a little bored with the John Wicks. Like I thought the first John Wick was fantastic. Second one was pretty good. Third one, I was like, it just gets more and more and more where it's just about the action, less about the story. So if if the action has a good story, I'm into it. If it's just purely like, headshots, I get bored. It just feels I don't know. I'm turning into an old man. I'm turning into like I want story.
No, we got franchise fatigue's real, whether it's Transformers, Fast X, Marvel, all of them. Like we don't expect you to say like, I've seen all the Fast movies and Transformers 5 that has King Arthur stuff in it.
The Fast and the Furious movie since that one in Brazil. I think, was it in Brazil?
That's 5, I think.
Yeah, whether they're like dragging some big thing down the street. Like
it's like a bank robbery. It's like a heist movie, right? Isn't that 5?
That's the last one I saw.
I will say, if you haven't seen it yet, give John Wick 4 a chance. It's probably the best one since the first one.
Okay.
So
give that one a shot. Incredible. I actually really loved the first one.
The third one I stood with too, but
4 picked up because I do agree with Philip that they were diminishing returns. By 3, I was looking at my watch when he's fighting the guys from the raid at the end. I'm like, okay, I've seen this. Good. How's he not dead? But yeah, 4 did kind of wrap it up in a good way. I was glad I saw it.
Yeah, like if I'm at the draft house, during like Fantastic Fest or just with some buddies drinking some beer, I can watch anything that's just full on action and stunts. But if I'm at home, I just kind of want story. I want to be moved. So I'll check out 4 because 3 definitely turned me off to the franchise. It got a little too comic booky for me when it was originally started off as something more heartfelt. I don't know.
Yeah, I think 4 gets back to its roots. I would give that a try. That's good. This is a John Wick promotional podcast, but hopefully I get down to Fantastic Fest this year and we can watch Hot Rod together. That will be we'll rent out a theater and watch Hot Rod.
Live record together. The Lord
intended. Oh, a live recording of Hot Rod. That's what we should do.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a movie that's on our short list of like, if someone hasn't seen this, we're going to do an episode with them. So yeah, Philip, you might be cordially invited back to be the first returnee. So I
got it on good authority. He wants nothing to do with this podcast anymore. So we'll see if I can get him. I might not be able to pay his rate. We might not be able to pay his rate a second time.
Named his daughter Ren, and not at all because his middle name is Ren.
Yeah, there you go.
Ren McCormick.
But no, wrapping up. Yeah, Ren McCormick. Wrapping up, we are glad you made it. You were late to the party, but at least you got here. We're glad you saw Footloose. We appreciate the time and BSing about all the silliness of it and the funky editing and all.
Well, I appreciate you guys. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Thanks, Phil.
Always a pleasure, sir. Appreciate it.
Of course.
All right. Our thanks to Mr. Phillip Guzman. No Phil, but maybe the Goose.
Yeah, it took me a little while, but I really warmed up to Philip while that was going on. So I think I'm going to stick with it and see where that takes me. But yeah, it was great to have Philip on. He's been a guy that I've known for a really long time and know to be a very savvy filmmaker and film fan. So I knew he'd have an interesting take on this.
I think everybody we've talked to so far on this program, not that these are in any order necessarily, but we find out at the very end they have other major blind spots that we may have to bring them back for. So whether it's Brian with some other vampire flicks or Mr. Goose here with the Hot Rod, we'll see what we do down the road here. But yeah, that's one we might have to.
I was pretty shocked that he had not seen Hot Rod. Yeah. That seems very up his alley.
Certainly, and especially liking Lonely Island stuff and Andy Samberg-led things, I think he's in for a treat with it.
Yeah, just knowing him and knowing his kind of personality and his humor style, we will have a fun episode when we finally get him on to talk about Hot Rod. I can promise you that.
So it was interesting that you mentioned a few times, like this was one of those movies you grew up with. So it really is like a soft spot for you.
Yeah, we've gone back to back now in these two of the last 3, where this and Lost Boys are both movies that are woven into my DNA that I just watched over and over and over and over again as a kid. I've always been a huge Footloose fan, not unlike Star-Lord. We never got into that during the podcast, but Star-Lord 2 believes that Footloose is the greatest movie of all time. So.
Yeah, I mean, I made reference that a few things had mentioned it, but like straight up just in the last couple years, Avengers Endgame, one of the biggest movies of all time, like straight up makes a Footloose joke. The Guardians of the Galaxy made one. Not only that, but their holiday special that came out a year or so back made a full-on special around kidnapping Kevin Bacon of Footloose for Star-Lord because he has all the late 80s references only in his brain. And that's what he remembered before he got snatched out from Earth. So yeah, the movie's certainly in the culture still, certainly relevant enough movie to cover. I'm glad we covered it. I've seen it many times over the years and I revisited it too in the interim here. So it does still hold up to me as a pretty decent 80s flick.
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, it'd been, probably a couple of years since I'd seen it, and it definitely holds up. I mean, I think the quality of the acting separates it from a lot of other 80s movies and gives it a more timeless quality. Like what Lithgow, what Sarah Jessica Parker, what Kevin Bacon are doing in the movie. It's just what Diane Wiest, friend of the show, Diane Wiest, what they're doing in that.
That's why we'll start calling the repeat people friend of the show, even though none of them are friend of the show. But yeah, Diane Wiest, our first inaugural friend of the show.
Oh, good for her. I'm going to reach out and make sure she's aware, make sure she listens. We have nothing but love on this podcast for Diane Wiest.
To your point about, we were talking about the omnipresence of the movie and how popular it was, but like you named off the top 10 of 1984 and like all of those had just mega soundtracks, or most of them at least, and just kind of really permeated the culture. So yeah, Footloose is no different. And again, Super Mario Brothers, just this year, second biggest movie of the year, possibly by when it's all said and done, had Holding Out for a Hero as a needle drop in the movie. And it's one of those that just like fits montages to this day.
Yeah, I mean, the soundtrack is incredible. Every one of those songs still gets played to this day, is still on the radio. It's, I mean, one day we'll do another episode, and I'm sure I'll say that has the best soundtrack, but this is definitely right up there. I mean, they're banger after banger. And like you said, some of them aren't even on the soundtrack. There's so many good songs in the movie getting needle dropped that they're not even all on the soundtrack.
Yeah, I'd forgotten like Hurt So Good and Bang Your Head, among others. Yeah. But we're glad Phillip took to it. You never can tell because hype and distance and all that stuff can affect the viewing. But we're glad he went footloose and fancy free, if you will, with this one. And I feel like dancing now.
That's right. I'm going to take my best girl across state lines and get a dance in before I go to bed tonight.
Right. A crazy girl with a death wish, we hope.
Yeah, hopefully she doesn't dangle out the car window, but you never know with these preacher's daughters.
Regular old Buster Keaton over here. Crazy lady. Like I said, preacher's kid energy in spades for sure. But yes, once more, thank you to Phillip. Thank you, Cam, for him, for Phillip. I'm Shawn Talley. He was late to the party, Phillip Guzman. He's now seen Footloose. Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation about it. Until next time, get back to work.
Stay footloose.